futurologist, or as we call it in the US, a futurist, is someone who, as a profession, thinks about the future implications, the ongoing implications of present-day decisions. That is, what are the things that could happen, what are the different kinds of things that could happen in the future as a result of the decisions that we have already made and we are making today. It's a way of thinking about our responsibility and thinking about the consequences of our actions. The futures thinking, or foresight thinking, futurism, there are different ways of describing it. Futures thinking can be very useful across a very wide spectrum of issues. I've actually been called upon to work with people in government, talking about political strategy, people working in education, people working in climate and the environment, all sorts of businesses, from food businesses to healthcare. Basically, foresight thinking, futures thinking, is a way of grappling with, of wrestling with big problems that can be applied to almost every kind of major issue. Futurology is actually a very useful tool for political and social action, because what it does is helps to define the consequences of problems that we're facing now. In particular, futures thinking is a very good way of discovering the more subtle, harder to define consequences and results. What futures thinking does as a way of thinking is it helps to uncover the harder to define and more subtle results, the things that are the surprising consequences of these decisions. Futurology can be a very useful tool for political and social action because it helps to define the surprising consequences and the sometimes hidden and subtle results of present-day decisions and issues that we're facing. Some examples of how futures thinking can be applied in the real world, they range considerably. I've done work with food companies to help them think about the long-term environmental consequences of the various strategic choices they face around production of food, distribution of food, so that they're able to make more sustainable choices about how to build their businesses. Norwegian sociologist Evelyn Lindner once said, "Pessimism is a luxury of good times. In difficult times, pessimism is a self-fulfilling, self-inflicted death sentence." Now, what she meant by that is that pessimism, basically thinking bad thoughts about the future, thinking negatively about the future, tends to make one give up and makes a person. And when things are difficult, when the economy is bad, when the world around us is challenging us, pessimism actually makes it less likely. Pessimism actually makes it less likely that we will be successful in meeting those challenges. So in that way, pessimism is really only okay if actually things are going okay. Because if things are difficult, if we are challenged by the world, pessimism just makes it all the more difficult to succeed. So one thing that's very important to know about how futurologists work is that we very rarely try to forecast just one single future. It's much more useful for us and for the people that we work with to think about a variety, 3 or 4 or more different futures, because we know that no prediction is ever correct. Predictions are always wrong. The goal is to be wrong in a useful way. That is, the goal is to provoke people to think and to be able to identify possibilities that they hadn't ever thought possible before, that they have never noticed before. And so I would not forecast one single future, one single forecast for Italy. Instead, I would challenge Italy to think about what happens in a world where the demographic issues that Italy faces it runs headlong with issues around immigration. So there's a forecast future for Italy where social issues become a primary source of struggle. There's a forecast for Italy where, because of what's happening with climate change, the many of its agricultural industries, whether it's wine or food, have to change. And so there's a forecast for Italy where that you have to really look at how to make your agriculture adapt to a changing climate. And we can look at a forecast for Italy where innovation, technological innovation and social innovation become a driver for a renewed economy, where a willingness to experiment, a willingness to try new things, because all of the old ways aren't working anymore. So you try new things, and that actually becomes a trigger for a renaissance.